no surprised. But Rangers and Celtic should be looking at him for his performances in the top flight this season. And in terms of Rangers, I just think generally Rangers, I know for a fact that they are constantly now looking at the Scottish Premiership and looking at the players doing well in this league. They're not going to sign all of them, clearly, but I think they are more aware now, more on the ball in terms of their kind of scouting, in terms of what's round about them. I wouldn't like to think they'd make the same mistake again when you think of guys that they've missed out on, Lewis Ferguson, Lawrence Shankland, to name a couple. So no, it doesn't surprise me they're looking at just same with Celtic, and there'll be others, in England and abroad, no doubt, because he's proved himself to be a terrific attacking midfielder in this league. So why wouldn't you be looking at him?
He's been brilliant, Keith, hasn't he? 7 goals, 7 assists, and as Scott kind of touched on there, if Celtic or Rangers do want him, they'd probably be advised to get in quick, because if he goes to the World Cup, has a stormer,
Well, do you know what? I think where Rangers and Celtic have got an advantage here is that they're both huge clubs. Elijah Just has now had a season in Scottish football. He understands the scale of these clubs, the size of them, the stadiums, the kind of support, everything that goes around the Old Firm. He gets it. If you were, say, he was still in Denmark or New Zealand, and Rangers and Celtic came at the table, and Sheffield United came at the table, and he didn't have any experience of, what he's had at Motherwell, I think that puts both Celtic and Rangers in front of the likely interest that might come from the second tier of English football. I don't see the Premier League in England chapping at his door. So I think that would put both Celtic and Rangers at the front of the queue. What I'm very surprised at, though, because we were talking about it at the start of the January window, if I was Celtic or Rangers, I would have been battering down Motherwell's door back then. It was obvious there was 2 or 3 players in that side, and he was probably at the top of that list that looked as if he could just slot straight in.
And especially
because of the quality he's got.
You look at Celtic bringing in, and again, no disrespect, but Mavuka, Adamu. Celtic really needed creative players in the wide area.
Yeah, I'm not sure. Would you say he's a wide player? I'm not sure that he is. I think he does a lot of work centrally, but no, I just think he's a very good football player. There's not a pick on him, by the way. You'd think a strong wind would knock him down, but he likes to get wired in. He's good at winning balls back, making tackles, being aggressive. But it's what he does on the ball, how he glides past people, the passes that he picks. A really intelligent football player, and I don't care where you want to play him. A really good, talented, technically clever football player could fit into either that Celtic starting 11 right now or the Rangers starting 11. So I'm really surprised that they saw him operating on their doorstep for the first 6 months of the season and didn't think it might be a good idea to go and ask the question in January.
I was trying to think, Jacko, who he kind of reminds me of, or a kind of similar type player. The guy I thought he was Ryan Christie. Do you agree with that? Is that a bit?
I'd see what you're saying.
It's not a bad shout.
Ryan Christie about him, who obviously did really well for Celtic and get a move to the or ended up in the Premier League. And I agree. He's been brilliant on the ball, but off the ball as well. When you look at Motherwell,
phenomenal.
When you look at Motherwell and how they play and how they press under Aska, I think Aska spoke about it himself. Just is almost always the one that goes and triggers the press for them. So you need to be really intelligent to do that, and then everybody goes and follows. And because he's work rate, because he's kind of desire to do it, not to graft and go and chase people down and hunt the ball back. He's been vital to Motherwell. And the other interesting thing, obviously, is we're talking about Rangers and Celtic being in for him. If Askow ends up being the Celtic manager in the summer,
well, we know how that story ends.
Exactly. If you're Askow and you get the Celtic job, Like, if he goes to Celtic, he'll be shopping in a different market, clearly. But given his performances this season and what he's done for him there at Motherwell, you'd be amazed if Ascow get that job and one of the first things he done wasn't go for just at Motherwell.
See, when you look at the fact players like Balakwisha, 5 million, how much could Motherwell ask for, do you think?
That's potentially where both Rangers and Celtic have got a problem. Because, you know, it's fine. Our clubs will sit there wishing that they could spend the sort of money that Celtic and Rangers spend in transfer fees. And you look at the money that's been so badly misspent on players that don't look anywhere near the required standard to get into that first team. Well, if I'm Motherwell, I'm sitting there going, well, this guy's been running rings around both of your midfields all season. So, see that 5 million you spent there and the 4 million you spent there. Don't come at me with anything less than a bigger number than that if you want our best player, because you know for yourself that what is it they say? There's a risk involved with any transfer, which is totally correct. But you've minimised the risk here because here's a guy that you've watched doing it week in, week out in the Scottish League, with a team supposedly of a lesser quality than what you're supposed to have. So that then, you know, rather than Motherwell have obviously won a watch. Did you say 300 grand, the original fee that they paid? Well, that 300 grand is going to be multiplied by about 20. Because I honestly think if you're Motherwell, you could turn around and be in fairly solid ground if you say to Celtic and Rangers, well, the bidding starts at 5. How high are you prepared to go?
Aye.
And then you just let the two of them battle it out. And you just walk about with a big black bin bag catching money.
And the great thing for Motherwell is they've almost kind of set the bar, Daniel, in terms of holding out for the right fee for Lennon Miller. When people probably, I was probably guilty of it myself, saying, no, Rangers and Celtic, why don't they just give me 2 million, 2.5, no, they'll get them because Motherwell need to sell. Credit to Motherwell, they held out, got what they wanted for Lennon Miller. They've basically did the same with Maswanisi in January, when there must have been clubs asked about. I think Askow's been quoted as saying clubs inquired and maybe even made bids, but not. They held on to him because they knew they wanted him for the end of the season. Obviously, that will kind of come to the fore again in the summer. The Maswanisi, but they've almost kind of set a level. Motherwell, they've kind of they've done well to kind of show teams. No, we won't be kind of messed about here. If we rate players and there's real interest in them from different clubs, then we'll hold out for what we think's right. So they're in a great position, as I say. They've got them a decent contract. Obviously, things might change, if the manager moves on. But getting into the summer, we just, as you say, going to a World Cup as well. I mean, if he plays and does well over there, the price just keeps going up. So they're in a great position, Motherwell.
I think whoever gets him is getting a really good player. If I was either side of Celtic and Rangers, I would be.
I know Jack was saying, talking about Mvuka or Balakwisha in a slightly different position.
No.
But you're right. The basis of what you're saying is right. The money these teams are spending on absolute rubbish, it's not contributing, is staggering. I mean, you look at, and I'm not saying he's rubbish, but you look at Rangers, kind of semi-committing to Skov Olsen, for instance. And I know Rangers have got the option, but I mean, if they take up that option, you're talking £8 million for this guy. I mean, that's a lot of money for what you've watched for Skov Olsen so far. If you're looking at him and just the profiles and what they've done, and I know it's maybe a wee bit harsh on Skov Olsen because he's not been here that long, but you look at what Justice doing. I don't think you'd be spending your 8 million on Skov Olsen this summer. I think if you could get just for half of that.
Tell me this, Scott. How much did Rangers? What was the fee for Thelo Asgard?
£3.5 million for Luton.
That's a fair chunk.
There you go.
Right,
you're right.
You tell me who you having. If you wanted to find a player to play in that advanced area of the pitch, somebody that can create goals, score goals, be a game changer. I mean, £3.5 million thrown away in Thelo Asgard.
Yeah.
Whereas that boy, Elijah Just would walk straight in and be an upgrade right away.